had a judgment debt passed on to government by a competent court of law, of course, following an abrogation, as a court found it, of a contract between Bankswitch and the government. As a result of that, we were asked to pay some excess monies. But over the last couple of days, according to the reports by the media, the Trade Minister, Dr. Kospio Gabra, had appealed to DICs, Destination Inspection Companies, to help pay up that debt, and in return, they get some contracts. Well, we have the Minister of Private Sector here in charge of PPPs, and he'll give us a lot more explanation. But the opposition representative party have been raising concerns that why should this happen at all? But get to the bottom of the matter. How come Bankswitch had their contract abrogated? We have on the line the communication director for the MPP, Nana Komio, on the line. A very good morning to you, sir. But what problem do you have? The judgment debt has already been given, and so we're supposed to pay. And so whatever it is, we're supposed to pay monies.
Hello?
Hello, sir.
Yes, sir.
What difficulty do you have with government asking DICs to at least help, defray whatever judgment debt there is, following the abrogation of the contract with Bankswitch, which the court of law has found not to have been done appropriately?
Well, thank you. Let me wish my good friends in the studio and the Honorable Pepo and Honorable Zewusu.
Yes, please.
Yes, let me wish them a good day, especially my boss, Honorable Pepo. Now, this Bankswitch matter is one matter where government has grossly misconducted itself. And as a result of that gross misconduct by government, every Ghanaian is now saddled with paying a judgment debt, which now is about $130 million. As you and I speak today, my brother, transport fares are going up by 15%. Cement price is going up by 9%. Petrol price went up 4%. All because we don't have dollars to support the city. So it is mind-boggling that in this situation that we are today, the government of Ghana has to go and find $130 million to pay judgment debts as a result of the government's own reckless cancellation of a contract. Look, destination inspection companies do destination inspection for sets, customs, and so on, and they get their fees. Their contract was finishing around 2009. SETS, which is a government agency, wanted to do the destination inspection themselves. Tender was put out. One company won the contract to partner SETS, getting the software, getting the technology, getting the infrastructure abroad, and getting the offices, so that SETS itself will be able to conduct destination inspection. The company that won the tender is called Bankswitch Limited. They had started their work from about 2007. Then the NDC came into office in 2009. They did a review of various contracts, including the Bankswitch contract. They approved the work that the company was going to do. They approved the contract. There's a letter to that effect that President Mills himself gave the go-ahead for the work to go on. Strangely, people in government found a way to cancel the contract for Bankswitch. So Bankswitch went to court, and they got a judgment debt of $74 million, which I think 2012 or so, and the government has not been able to pay. So interest charges and so on has brought the money to nearly $130 million. At the time that the judgment was given, even members in cabinet admitted that the cancellation was a mistake. And today, government is not able to pay. Spio Gabra, the new Minister for Trade, is trying to get private companies to come and pay some of the money so they'll be giving contracts. there are ethical issues. There are rules that govern procurement in this country. So, people are worried that are the rules being breached? Is it ethical to ask companies to come and pay money so they get a contract and all of that? While those issues are being raised, the ministry issues from Spielgaber's office, issues a letter trying to explain why the ministry has taken those steps and the difficulties that they find themselves in. But then they sought to blame the NPP. They said some evil politicians. They even blame you media people. They said some people in the media too and civil society are the people to blame. Can you imagine the impunity? You have gone and cancelled the contracts behind the back of the president, and you have incurred a judgment debt of about $130 million for Ghana. And you are desperately finding ways to pay that.
Now, do you
concentrating on that? You are seeking to blame other people.
Now, do you think that perhaps this could be cured if the Trade Ministry is able to put something before Parliament for some level of approval, even though we have procurement processes, so to speak? Because really, if we had the monies in the coffers, I'm sure we would have paid.
Now, well, there are two issues. How did you go and contract the judgment debt in the first place?
Well, that's long past, is that not it? It's past.
But if you don't cure,
you don't cry over spilled milk.
No. But if you don't cure it, it will happen again. So, have you forgotten Wyoming, where people went behind the president and paid money, and today we are all struggling to get that money back? Have you forgotten Waterville, where people went behind the president and paid money, and today we are struggling to get the money back? Have you forgotten CP?
So the rationale is?
Bankswitch. So I'm saying that if, number one, you have to find out which government officials occasion this loss. Otherwise, it will continue. Today is Bankswitch. Tomorrow, there will be another company.
All right.
Okay.
That's
number one. Number two, if you want to find an alternative way to pay the money, make sure that it doesn't breach any law. People have raised issues that if you're asking companies to come and pay you $35 million so you can give them a contract, it could amount to bribery, it could amount to breach of the procurement laws. So if you think that you have some justification in terms of the law, in terms of the ethics of contract and all of that, come and explain, show Ghanaians that yes, what I'm doing can be supported by the law and all of that. Don't come and tell Ghanaians that it is some evil politicians and some media people.
All right.
That's impunity of the highest level.
All right.
And you've gone and caused this debt. You haven't punished anybody. And look at what you are doing.
Right. Thank you very much. Nana Kumia is a communications director of the MPP and explains the issues adequately. We know this had been in the media some months back, some parts last year also. But still has resurfaced, especially following those directives or discussion had with the DICs by the Trade Minister. I have to go to you, Dr. Rashid Pelpo.
Yeah, I think that Nana was objective in some instances, and
but not all.
Yeah, not all of it, and his call for us to look for ways by which we can settle the debts without setting aside the procurement process and without breaching the law is important. The minister's action is well-founded. He didn't do it with the intention of breaching the law or causing any problems in the system. But if he's criticized and it is found that, like he said, if it is found that there is a possibility that it will be interpreted as corruption or interpreted as a breach of the procurement process, would need to find some other ways of doing it. Because to the best of his intentions, he thought that the people he has worked with all these years have gotten used to, who have been winning all the contracts, because they have the equipment, they have the means, they have been in this job for a while, definitely are the same people who will continue to win the jobs. So his call on them to see it as a national duty to respond to the challenge we are facing now, for me is logical, but not to be imposed on them. If it is given to them as to look at it from the point of view of nationals, these are companies that are national companies. What I mean by national companies, they are citizens of the nation, companies that are citizens of the nation, meaning they were formed here by people, they registered in this country, and so they become part and parcel of the whole idea of this nation and have an influence on the economy. If they are thinking, they see that there's a need for us to solve this problem so there can be a way forward for all of them to be happy and doing their business, they can come in to contribute on their own free will without any compelling factor at all.
Well, there's a compelling reason.
Yeah.
If you do, you get contracts. That's a compelling thing.
No. So I'm just commenting on what
you can't do it
Nana
on your
has
free
said.
will. Nobody just wants to give 35 million, but it's because I'll get something in return.
Nana has said that, well, it's in order, and that if we can find a way of going about it, and this is one of the ways, give it to them on their own free will. If they feel that, well, we think that government has to be helped out in this situation because we all benefit from government, we all benefit from this economy. If the economy is struggling because of somebody's judgment debt, we can come in to help. If that happens, it will take away the element of compulsion and the circumvention of the processes, procurement processes, and the feeling that there might be some act of corruption embedded in it, so that these things will be settled.
Well, as we talk about this, I know you want to make commentary on this. You can also make comment on whether it borders on issues of ethics, sound corporate governance practices, and also some moral judgment. As we make all this, then we know that this is will be in a breach of the procurement law, so to speak.
That's exactly the point. As far as I'm concerned, your responsibility as a minister is to implement government policy in accordance with the law and the rules of the country. If people's contracts have expired, it has to be procured. And the procurement is through the Procurement Act, right? When you say, pay me so much to get a contract, what happens if I don't have the money to pay? It means I'm debarred from getting the contract, doesn't it? But the more important thing is that, is the debt of the Ministry of Trade? It's the debt of the country. So in what capacity would be those companies paying the debt of the country? Is it a loan to the country? If it is a loan, what rules govern the loans? The Constitution. It says how Ghana can contract loans. If in other case, otherwise, how is that going to be recorded in Ghana's revenue recordings? In what and under what item? This is not a revenue. What it is a loan. And is it proper to take a loan through this in this manner? So I think.
Is it a loan?
What else can it be? Is it a charge to the companies? Is it a fee? What is it?
In other words, what you're saying is that we can't operate such relationships thinking that it's just a...
Pay me money for a service. What is it?
Kind of, yeah.
What is it? When they provide a service, they collect fees on behalf of the state and they retain their portions, right? So they are agents for revenue collection. Now, when you say pay me sums of money, 35 million, before I contract you for that agency, what is that money to you? Is it a fee for the contract? Or is it a loan to you, to be defrayed by the services that I offer? So I think that the minister has taken the wrong step, but the part that is, for me, most unfair is to turn around and accuse other people. His one minister I would have thought would stay away from these needless accusations and focus on the work.
Okay.
What is important is that Ghana owes money, it has to pay. Ordinarily, when Ghana owes money, it's the Ministry of Finance that has to raise the money.
We've seen this before. Governments come into power, and I remember in 2001, when the NPP administration came to power, they also reviewed contracts.
Yes.
Okay. Some were abrogated. Actually,
Right.
some never saw the light of day. Following that, we had some Hyundai cars that were parked somewhere, never used. So I don't want to equate it to that. But when I'm talking about actions and inactions, now, where lies the case, a government comes into power, sees that, for example, I'm giving hypothetical situations, contracts that are currently ongoing, the beneficiary companies, I'm talking about the contractors undertaking those contracts, you look at the membership of those contracts, or the director, so to speak, could have linkages to businessmen politically or etc. And we're talking truthfully here because it happens. I'm not saying it happens in Ghana, but happens elsewhere or may happen even in Ghana. So if perhaps they didn't take the right steps to abrogate the contract or wait till the tenure of the contract expired and decide not to renew, so that's the reason. And so don't you think as politicians and as stakeholders and as civil society we can have reason for that?
No, listen, this mentality that the country is divided into left and right. So when I'm in power, everybody not on my side should business should collapse. It's a sick mentality. When we talk about GDP, the total aggregation, both left and right, unless a procurement can be faulted on grounds of law, should let it go. Anybody who does that is not thinking right. The country is made up of people who think left and those who think right. Businesses are owned by people who left and those who are right. So if you're a leader of the country, you don't lead for left or for right. You lead for everybody in the country. And therefore to say that we found connections to some people in the left or in the right is, in my view, a very wrong.
Because I hear that. That's how come I came back.
It's actually stated by Honorable Speaker Gabriel's statement.
Oh,
it is part of it.
I didn't read the
that
statement.
they linked. They found that that company was linked to some MPP politicians. For me, so what? If they were linked to a foreign country, we'd be glad to let them go. If money goes to a
because at the end, the money comes back to Ghana. That's the argument. But the point is, but the point is, at what point do we have to say what the minister said was appropriate or not appropriate?
What I'm saying, that some evil politicians caused that. How did the evil politicians call it? The contract was reviewed, and get it. The president signed a letter saying that they have reviewed the contract. Everything was all right. Proceed.
Okay. We have on the line
Mills.
the Minister of Trade, and Dr. Kospio Gabra is on the line. Very good morning to you, sir. Do you think the dialogue you had with the... Do you think the dialogue... Okay, good morning, sir. Do you think the dialogue he had with the DICs or the way it was communicated has been misconstrued in many respects?
Well, that is how I think we should see it. To be very charitable, let us say it can be misconstrued. But on the other hand, if you have members of parliament asking for the minister to resign or to be dismissed or thinking that the minister is bribing people, then it's not just misconstruction. But that some people deliberately want to throw that in the air or confuse the general public and make it seem as if the ministry is doing something wrong. As you may be aware, the ministry wrote an official government of Ghana letterhead to private companies to invite them to express interest in helping the people of Ghana solve a judgment debt problem. That is what we are trying to solve here, so we shouldn't confuse each other. A company called Bankswitch has taken the government of Ghana to court, has won a judgment debt of about 197 Ghana cedis. And the people of Ghana are being asked to forgo our hospitals and our schools and our industries in order to pay them 197 million Ghana cedis. That's a lot of money. Now, the ministry, of course, has a lot of challenges with financing. And so, because this matter is in the trade sector, it involves imports and exports, and Bankswitch was going to do work in the trade fabrication area, the Ministry of Trade and Industry invited destination inspection companies to express interest as to whether they will be willing to pay approving that is going to kill all of us. And we do also have to put 1 billion cedis worth of additional contracts to Bankswitch, even if they have been paid the entire judgment debt. Are you following me?
Yes, I am. I am, sir.
We are trying to avoid one, proving interest on the 197 million Ghana cedis will cost us another, 150 or 200 million Ghana cedis in interest alone. Also, awarding Bankswitch a contract that will put 1 billion cedis.
Okay.
After the judgment debt. So the DICs have all responded. If they thought they were being bribed or they were being unethically approached, they wouldn't have responded positively. They responded positively to say, yes, we are willing to prepay this judgment on your.
Okay.
Then a contract that will allow us to recoup our investment.
Dr. Gabra, we'll be happy if you're using your mobile line. It means that you have to put the thing on speaker, because it seems that because it's a touch phone, your skin may be touching it or so we're getting some feedback from it.
Sorry.
Okay, that's all right. Now, were you doing? I know you said, well, it was put on a letterhead, etc., and so it makes it as if it's a legal thing, so to speak. But what about the issues of procurement and the issues of legality? If the 5 companies, well, we know they are in the sector, they undertake whatever the DICs undertake, yes. But what if one of them may not be interested, or one may even not go through the processes as far as the procurement laws are stating? That it means that one is out, so to speak, and doesn't contribute. And those are the concerns that the MPs are raising.
We haven't gotten to any procurement process. We have not gotten to a procurement process. Secondly, the issue of judgment debts, the debts are paid by the Ministry of Finance. My ministry does not pay judgment debts. So all I had to do was to refer all the letters expressing interest from the 5 DICs to the Minister of Finance and for the Attorney General's Department for them to work out how they want to proceed. So I was just giving them another option on the table. I am not the one negotiating with the DICs or with Bankswitch on the payment of judgment debts. So the issue of procurement doesn't come in. The issue of so-called legality doesn't come in. No contract has been signed with anybody with regards to this judgment debt issue.
Okay.
And no payments have been made to anybody either.
In your statement,
we're at a very, very early stage of finding out who is willing to help us pay this judgment debt, so we don't have to pay interest, and so we don't have to pay 1 billion cedis to a certain company. If the problem was in the mining sector, the mining minister may have asked a number of mining companies, which of you want to help us to do this? If the problem was in the forestry sector, the minister of forestry may have sent it to forestry company. You understand?
Well, I do understand you appropriately, but then in your statement, you said there were some politicians linked to it, to the contract especially, or the Bankswitch contract, and as a result of that, ultimately, the monies wouldn't have come to Ghana all the same. And also, how would you describe the way your actions have been misconstrued or interpreted?
As I told you, this was a contract with Bankswitch that was signed in the Kufuor administration. And then the Atamil's administration came and cancelled it. So there's no question that there's a political dimension to it. MPP government signs a contract, NDC government comes and cancels it. Then a subsequent NDC government is supposed to pay the judgment debt. So quite clearly, the businessmen who are behind the contract and their political associates will not be happy that actions are being taken by a ministry such as mine to save money for the people of Ghana. There are people who want us to go and pay this 1 billion cedis to Bankswitch and for them and their friends to share. And many of us in government think this is not wise. This is not the best way to spend the money of the people of Ghana. 1 billion cedis can do a whole lot of work in our health sector, in our water and sewage sector, saving flood victims, saving fire victims, building schools and hospitals and roads, rehabilitating our harbors. Why would you just go and pay to somebody who you have already paid the entire judgment debt to? Are you following me?
Yes, sir. Are the companies willing to...
an additional contract to a company that claims you owe them money.
Okay.
You pay them the whole money, and then they say, pay me another 1 billion cedis of contract.
Okay. How many of the companies among the 5 have so far expressed interest to go along with your suggestion?
All the 5 expressed interest, and as I said, their interest in letter, written in letter form, been referred to the Minister of Finance, copied to the Attorney General's Department for their consideration.
Okay.
And my job is finished. I've done my part.
All right. So you still go ahead with it, no matter what criticism there are?
I have referred it to my colleague ministers responsible for the judgment debt, and they will take any appropriate decision consistent with the laws of the Republic of Ghana.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kospio Gabra, the Minister of Trade for the Republic of Ghana. Thanks very much. And I was about speaking. You hear what he said.
Yeah.
He is very much assertive as to what he wants to do and what the steps he has taken. It reminds me of a GNPC incident where, well, we had problems with the, was it a ship? Is it a drill ship?
Drill ship.
So we had to sell it to offset the debts? Is that it? Okay.
Similar. Yeah. So I think that he has been very forthright in what he has done and what he thinks is right. And as I was saying, I can only congratulate the companies for responding positively to our requests for them to support Ghana government in offsetting this debt. And I believe that he did it with all the best of intentions. If people read between the lines and see that there's a problem with it, they can raise those problems. We should try to solve the problem as a country, not as parties, because if we see that the government of Ghana or the people of Ghana are saddled with a judgment debt to that extent, and some very committed companies are willing to support us to pay off the debt because they have been benefiting from this country. And after an appeal is raised by a minister, you know, written to them, to appeal to them, if they decide that they would pay or they will help us to pay, kudos to them and thank you to them. And I hope that would understand it along that line and not to see it as an imposition on them and then a line towards corrupting them or corrupting ourselves and all that. In the end, my expectation is that we should objectively deal with this problem. We should transparently deal with it so that all cards are on the table for everybody to examine. We don't examine it with the political coloration that we are putting on now. We open our eyes and see the reality. And as I said, Nana Akomia was very objective in analyzing it. What he didn't tell us, and what Dr. Spiogaba has told us, is the reason for the debts, the reason for the cancellation of the earlier contract, the feeling that there would have been a raw deal to the people of Ghana. We would have lost as much as $1 billion.
Was that feeling, or it's just
well,
due diligence undertaken?
Because
a contract is a legal.
You don't sign a contract and suffer the consequences where you find that there's a lopsided contract, and also you find that there was a misrepresentation in the contract, which to the effect will have a negative effect on the one signing the contract with the other.
Okay. So wait. So the thing I get is, at the end of the day, what we would have lost, even though the contract would have been adhered to, is more than what we are going to pay now, as far as the judgment is concerned.
Let me admit to the fact that I don't know the whole dimension of the problem.
Well, I have read a lot of things about it, but I'm not here.
But listening to the minister, I think that he did what he did in good faith.
Okay, I think you know a lot more, but it's
no,
appropriate that you say.
You know, the things that are coming out, that you sign a contract.
Well, that's so you're trying to make political meal or capital out of it.
Listen to what he says here in his statement. We are saving Ghana from paying 1 billion judgment.
Well,
debt.
he said it on air too.
Right. The trade minister says it's saving the country for paying more expensive. There's a place where he talks about, yes. It's rather trying to help save people of Ghana from an evil plot by some businessmen and politicians to rape the country's treasury. How does rape come in? This is not a Wayome thing where you prepare fraudulent documents to claim money you have not worked for. This is a judgment debt. You have gone to court. The court has made an award, and you're being asked to pay. Whether or not, if there was a misjudgment, you have the option to appeal. So if you're not appealing against it, it means that you accept that there's a finality to the issue, you must pay. So how does paying your just debt become a rape to the country? But the more important thing is the attempt to create the impression by my colleague here that there was something amiss. There's an official letter signed by President Mills okaying the contract after it had been reviewed.
But he cancelled it.
It is not him.
But that's what he said.
The letter purporting to cancel the thing is purported to have been signed on his behalf. The letter agreeing for the go-ahead was signed by him in person. You know, so just within a short period, he okays it, and so another person, chief of staff, signs a letter saying on behalf of the president that has been cancelled. But whatever it is, it has been cancelled. There are consequences. Every contract can be abrogated, but there are consequences to the abrogation. And that is what Ghana is suffering. What is happening now is you're asking companies to, as a condition for getting their job, to pay them money.
So you are raising questions on what condition are they doing that?
That's right.
And how is that situated in the legal regime?
Help me. He tried to explain that he doesn't.
I know. He's talking moral. I think more moral.
Help me pay my debt, then I give you a job.
But you are raising issues of legality.
That's right. It's critical. And even that help me, what does it mean? Is it a gift or a loan?
All right. We have to end our discussions, though. But let me just put this in as a caveat. Early on, when all this started coming up, I also asked some questions and did some reading. The understanding I got was that if they waited for the contract period to be seen through up to the end, the revenues, as far as what would have been accruing to the chest of Ghana, would have been less than what we're getting currently. And so abrogating the contract and what we're paying is better off as far as we're concerned. And that was what he was referring to, the 1 billion, not necessarily about the judgment.
It would have been helpful if we're doing an objective analysis. Put all you have here, let all the facts be put on the ground. Anytime the protagonist has the opportunity to speak, he will play down what was the benefit. But I'm sure that when contracts are worked, it's not started from the ministries. The technocrats work on it before it comes to
my guest for the morning, Joe Wise. Joe Say Wusu is a member of parliament for Bekwai, went through very easy election. We won a landslide. And so thanks for joining me. He's a legal practitioner as well. And also a Minister of State at the presidency in charge of private sector and the subject of PPPs and the role they play in development is Dr. Rashid Pelpo, member of parliament for Wa Central. And thanks for joining me, sir. I hope to have you again sometime in the studio. And that'll be where we end the show. But as we end, please, we're hearing that the evictees at Ofadama, Sodom and Gomorrah are up in arms, and they're having some demonstration. And so we'll bring you all that. No mercy for NDC in 2015. And Gladys Oredo is on the line. Gladys, what's been happening there? We're getting pictures you are sending us.
Yes,
it's frightening.
You hear the president here, how else should I put it? Well, they are very, very angry this morning. As if since the day the demolition exercise began, they haven't had any peace, and so if they won't be given the peace, they are not going to give anybody also the peace. So they have been demonstrating, protesting this morning, and currently it's getting a bit chaotic because they have lost the road. And now they are burning cars in the middle of the road. They just don't understand anything. So we just hoping that the police get there on time to stop them.
Well, Gladys, get all the information for us. We know appropriately on the next program we'll get to have a lengthy discussion on the subject. And that's been Gladys Oredo reporting from Old Fadama here in Accra. And that'll be it for the show. Please join us same time tomorrow, same time. We'll be giving you a lot more. Have a good morning. Bye-bye.